It's early August 2021, and I'm sitting in my basement in upstate New York, and I'm trying hard not to disturb everyone who's sleeping upstairs. The quiet outside is pretty typical of the countryside where I live, but it's a stark contrast to the frantic scramble unfolding in Afghanistan, 8.5 hours ahead. My phone lights up. It's a familiar number from Kabul. I can hear the urgency in her voice, the mix of fear and determination as we discuss the crisis escalating around her and the danger closing in. My phone won't stop pinging. Calls, emails, text messages. My number has spread on chat boards and message groups. Messages flood in, each more urgent than the last. They're filled with photos of families with beautiful children, passport pictures, letters of employment, degrees, anything that will deem them worthy of help, and all of them fearing for their lives. With US and NATO troops withdrawing, the Taliban is quickly advancing on Kabul, and we know what's coming. It's a return to brutal repression that puts anyone who's spoken for women's rights in grave danger. Yet, amid this unfolding crisis, a powerful collective response has already begun. Women's rights activists worldwide are mobilizing. Across continents, we're making plans, connecting, sharing contacts, pooling resources, coordinating evacuations, and we are amplifying Afghan women's voices. We come from Afghanistan, Greece, Pakistan, India, Switzerland, Canada, France, and Sri Lanka. We are on the phone and on the ground. We're part of this global network who's racing against the clock to help as many women as possible leave Afghanistan before the Taliban return to power. Let me be clear. No one ever wants to leave their home. These are unthinkable choices that people have to make during conflict and crisis. One of my dear friends left Afghanistan, arriving in a new country with only the clothes on her back, without shoes, having burned everything in her home, pictures, documents, any trace of her former life. But for these women, the alternative was to be imprisoned, tortured, or worse. It's in this intense collaboration across borders that I am reminded of something powerful. Ending violence against women and girls takes collective action, and the collective action of women can move mountains. My life's work is to prevent and respond to violence against women and girls in all its forms: domestic violence, rape, sexual abuse, honor killings. And when I speak about violence against women, I think of it as Catherine McKinnon does: aggression against and exploitation of women because we are women. For me, this is not an abstraction. It's my reality and the reality of the lives of so many women I know who face oppression woven into every aspect of their world. As a humanitarian working with survivors over the past decade in over 30 countries, I've bared witness to many of the global crises that most of you will only have seen as a fleeting headline that flashed across your screen. I've worked with women trafficked for sex, girls at risk of marriage at age 9, women enduring domestic abuse in refugee camps, and young women raped while fleeing armed men taking over their village. I've walked alongside them to find options and ways out when their own families would rather kill them than endure the shame of their abuse. I've supported girls denied education, bodily autonomy, and their basic and fundamental rights. Forced into marriage as children or mutilated within days of their birth. But here's the thing. We often talk about violence against women and girls in the wrong ways. First, we talk in terms of statistics, such as 1 in 3 women will suffer violence during the course of our lifetimes. On average, more than 133 women and girls are killed every day by someone in their own home. And a new report released just last month tells us that 1 in 8 girls alive today were raped or sexually assaulted as children before they even turned 18. We also know these figures are likely much, much higher. And this violence significantly increases in times of crisis. While these statistics matter, they can dehumanize. Yes, 1 in 3 women experience violence, but it's not just a number. Look around this room. Think of the women sitting with you. Think of the women that you work with, those in your family. 1 in 3 women means a lot of people in this room. This number includes me. Second, we often treat violence against women as a problem that's happening over there, rather than something that's connected to our own lives. But violence isn't confined by borders. And the struggles in Afghanistan, New York, or Lausanne are deeply interconnected. These are the product of the same patriarchal structures that oppress all of us. Take the story of Giselle Pellico, whose husband admitted to drugging her and orchestrating her rape by more than 50 other men. Giselle's courage, which we are watching live, in bringing these men to justice, reminds us that violence against women happens everywhere. Her abusers were ordinary men, men we might know and recognize from our own lives. Her story, it underscores that violence against women is not a distant problem. It's right here. This violence is intentional and pervasive. It is not isolated or random, not just a few bad apples, but rather it follows patterns designed to isolate, control, and oppress us. It's also embedded in our social structures, with our legal systems failing to protect us, allowing abuse to persist, with healthcare systems and providers lacking the training necessary to identify and care for survivors, leaving so many women's trauma invisible, without the care they deserve and need. And third, there's a misconception that people like me are heroes, and those we work with need rescuing. There's a quote that's guided my life's work. If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. This quote is often attributed to Lila Watson, but as she rightly shares, this was in fact developed through the collective action of the Aboriginal rights movement. And as a survivor myself, my experiences fuel my work. I don't do this work to be a hero. I do it because my liberation is bound to the liberation of every woman I've ever met, and it's bound to yours too. If we want a world free from violence, we need each other. We're witnessing a global reckoning, with movements demanding an end to the violence women face, from Me Too to the fight against sexual exploitation in the humanitarian field. There is a tsunami of change happening out in the world, and it's led by activists, survivors, and allies, and it is relentless. We're not backing down, and we need you with us. Last year, I had a daughter. She's 1 next week, and she's actually here this evening, probably sleeping. And the story that I want to tell her about violence against women and girls is one of a past that we no longer endure. I want her to see only fossils and relics of these struggles, to understand what once was, but isn't hers to carry. I want her to know, too, the story of the rising tide of women who made this world possible. So here's how we can do it. See it, because we cannot change what we do not see. See the women of Ukraine, of Gaza, of Sudan, of Afghanistan as our sisters in the fight for liberation. Do not other their violence. Speak it. Speak out against violence in all its forms. Get curious about the systemic roots of this violence. Dissect it, understand it, push through your discomfort, because on the other side is liberation. And you'll find a new clarity about what oppression looks like and how you can dismantle it. Be an upstander. Talk about rights. Talk about violence. Stand up for equality. Bring these challenging conversations to your dinner tables. We need to break this culture of silence and support it. Support local women's shelters and women's movements. They have been doing this work all along, and they know what their communities need. Let them be your guide. And men, we need you too. Sit with your discomfort as we share our stories. Because while not all men are violent, the perpetrators of this violence are men. And that is a reality that should make us all deeply uncomfortable, especially men. To those men who already stand with us, thank you. Please continue to inspire others. Keep speaking out, and always do so working as our allies, guided by our wisdom. We cannot do this work without you. We begin by speaking out in our own communities, refusing to pretend this is somebody else's problem happening somewhere else. We must break these intergenerational taboos. We must talk. There's really no other choice. Each act of bravery we take in our own corners of the world, they matter, and they roll up to a much larger movement. Now is the time for courage, conversation, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. You have the power to rewrite this story. The story I shared of evacuating women from Afghanistan, this was not my job. I was not getting paid to do this work. I was simply doing what needed to be done and what I had the networks, resources, and power to do. And you have the power to do things in your own communities, and we each have a responsibility to do them. So let us not just imagine this world free from violence against women. Right on cue. Let's build a future where this violence is a relic of the past. And I promise it will be a collective act of beauty, solidarity, and liberation.